Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. As always, I'm Alec Caberna, and that is Mike Wolfgang. Mike, last night NHL action yet again. Home team wins it. I'm not surprised the way I thought it was going to go. Home teams have been dominating in the Eastern Conference. What was your takeaways, though, from the NHL playoffs last night?
Same as you, I wasn't too surprised. I just feel like a big takeaway for me is that Tampa Bay's starting to wake up, and I think that you play. It's when you get on the Rangers early. We've seen it in the Pittsburgh series and in the Carolina series. And you get on them early and you get this shit a little bit early. They're not a team that's really going to come back on you. That's the strength of them is for them to start out in front. And these two games, I know they started out in front in Game 3, but they were able to. Tampa Bay was able to find something. I was talking yesterday. I thought that was maybe going to carry over, and I think it did last night. And I think Tampa got away from the first two games. Like I said, they're playing just because they're the defending champs and that they were just the stars and that they're going to beat you that way. That's not the way they won those two Stanley Cups. And I think the last two games they got back to playing their brand of hockey. And I know it helps when you're home, but they're back to playing their brand of hockey, and they're feeling pretty good going into Game 5 on the road.
Yeah, and I mean, as they should, because as much as I think you have to talk about the fact that the Rangers did kind of dominate in those first two games, now Lightning are getting back to it. I think so part of it is this is more the imbalance I think we've seen with the offensive production from the New York Rangers, because this entire series so far, the Lightning have been they scored 2 goals in each of the first 2 games. They put up 3 in the Game 3 and now 4 here in Game 4. This offense has been fairly consistent for the Lightning, putting up about the same amount of goals. Obviously, getting 2 more here than they did in the first 2 games, but even 3 over the 2 they had in the prior 2. You're seeing Tampa's offense consistent. Now the defense stepped up a little bit at home, but I think part of this has been kind of what we've seen out of New York all postseason, in which their offense has just been a roller coaster for this team. And I think that's really been highlighted in this series. I mean, being at home, they put up 9 goals in those 2 games. Now here on the road, they get 3. That's a big difference, and that's not all just defensive adjustments being made by Tampa Bay. That's a lack of consistency from New York, and it's something that has kind of plagued them this entire postseason. You go back into the last series against the Hurricanes, first 2 games, they put up 1 combined goal between the 2 of them, and they went to overtime in one of those games. Games 3 and 4, they then come back and put up 7 goals, and it's complete change-up. When this team's offense goes on the road, they have been terrible outside of 1 game, and that was Game 7 against the Hurricanes when they put up 6 goals when the Hurricanes just flat out were exhausted in that series. I don't know if we're going to see this Rangers team be able to keep this up now that the Lightning have kind of figured out some things defensively as well.
And I'm not taking anything away from the Rangers. They've gotten to this point. I think we all give them their credit. But they've gotten, and I know to win championships and to get to this point in the playoffs, you have to have luck. We talk about it in basketball too. As much as you want to talk about injuries, you got to have luck along the way. And I think that the Rangers have had their fair share of that. Going back to their first series, they really have not, in this whole playoffs, have not played well on the road, outside of 1 game in the Pittsburgh series when you can argue Pittsburgh lost a series, but they didn't have Sidney Crosby, so that's a big factor there. Then, like you just said, the Carolina series, they didn't play well on the road, but they've found a way to win 1 game. It was the last game in Game 7. So they're barely getting by, and I just don't know if that was something for me coming into the series. That's why I picked Tampa in 6, I believe, because I just don't know if you're going to be able to get away with that stuff against defending champs like Tampa Bay, because they're not going to give you that much margin for error.
I think what's going to happen when we go back into New York tomorrow, we'll talk about this on the show, obviously, is you're going to see the Rangers offense go off yet again. And I think I'm just more interested to see if the Lightning's defense can stay at the level they were playing at home, because that has definitely been a big factor for the New York offense here, is that home and away runs. But if Tampa can put up 3 or 4 goals in that game, I think they have a very real possibility of stealing one on the road. And keep in mind, being good at home is benefiting the Rangers. They don't have to win on the road right now. Game 7 is in New York. They just have to keep winning at home, and they can take this series. So the pressure still remains on for Tampa. We split this 2-2 at home. Each home team won it. And right now, that's favoring New York to see. Tampa has to show, before we start talking about Tampa winning in 6, we have to see them win on the road first, because, if we go back home and New York wins again at home, they're looking primed to take this series because they have 2 games to do it, and one of those they get at home. Pressure right now for Game 5 is on Tampa.
Oh, I think it is for sure because, like you said, now it's best of three. You got one more on the road, and I think Tampa's definitely. I'm not going to sit here and act like. And I know I'm not saying you're saying this, but I said this yesterday. I got more confidence in Tampa winning a road game than the Rangers because they really have not. They've struggled doing that this postseason. They've only won like what those two games on the road.
Yep, 2 games
To this point, so that's pretty
but
tough. And
remember, those 2 games they've won on the road have been pretty much series clinchers. So
yeah,
don't count this New York team out just because of that fact. I
oh
think
no,
they're a lot better than what that says about them.
and I think they're capable because like we just said in Game 3, they had a 2-0 lead. They jumped out to 2-0 lead, so they show that they can start out with the lead. They haven't been able to close it, but they're capable of getting a road win. But it's the same thing I keep referencing back to basketball with the Golden State Warriors. They won just on the road as much as they won at home, and I think that's when you're winning Stanley Cups and winning NBA Finals, you got to do that, and you're doing it consistently. Tampa's done that consistently. I just think they got it. Now they found something in these 2 games. Now they got to carry it over to. It's easy to say you got to take it on the road. That's what you have to do.
Right now, by the way, in comparison for Tampa, they have won 4 road games to this point to New York's 2, and 2 of those came back in the opening series against the Maple Leafs. They won games 2 and game 6. Or no, pardon me, game 7
7,
of
yeah,
that series. And then they took the 2 road games and a 4-game sweep of the Florida Panthers. Just
yeah,
for parity's sake in this part of it.
yeah, and something else I kind of took away last night is I keep going back to the power play. You got to capitalize on that. Tampa's getting it going a little bit on the power play. And the Rangers, they haven't really gotten any chances in these last 2 games to get into a power play situation. If they have, they haven't capitalized on it because you have 1 goal to show for it in this game, 2, so 3 goals in these total 2 games on the road. So they got to get that going too. I think they play better with the power play at home, so that's something to keep an eye on. And they just overall play better at home. We keep talking about that. And this whole playoff so far, you hit on it yesterday. It's been a series of winning at home and losing on the road. Somebody's got to change that.
Yes, somebody does, and I mean that's just what this entire postseason has been. It's been teams kind of hunting to steal one on the road. That's what I'm loving right now about these playoffs because we saw Colorado do it. Colorado on the other side of the Western Conference is the only team this entire postseason that has been able to consistently win on the road, and that's going to be huge going into into the Stanley Cup Finals. And I think the biggest thing in these last 3 games of the series, if it goes out to 7, we know it's already going to 6. Good chance of it going to 7 with the way these 2 teams have played so far. One of these teams has to grab some momentum somewhere because Colorado, they have steamrolled, then they've gotten some breaks, then they steamrolled, got a break, and now they got a chance to go into the Stanley Cup Finals after steamrolling their way into it, and now they're on a break again. They're going to come in against a super fresh team on the other side, especially if this goes to 7, a team that has dominated the entire postseason, has not yet been challenged by anybody. I mean, they got forced to 6 games, but I really don't look at that as they were really getting pushed. St. Louis was a good team, give credit there. But Colorado's got all this momentum. They're going to come in fresh. We've seen offenses for them been explosive. And over here on the Eastern Conference side, I don't even know if I would say one of these 2 teams would stand a chance. And there's a good probability when we go to pick Stanley Cup Finals that I'm taking Colorado in 4 or 5 games, especially if this series goes to 7 and it's all home teams winning. There's a good shot for me that either one of these Eastern Conference teams, it doesn't matter who wins, is going to lose the Stanley Cup Final. It's only going to be a matter of how many games, unless Tampa takes these next 2 games. You have to steal one on the road, or either the Rangers win the next 2. If this goes 7, Eastern Conference has no chance of winning the Stanley Cup Finals this year.
Yeah, and it's the fact that you've seen it from Colorado that they sweep that first round series with the. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I was sitting there.
Yeah, thought I heard something, but we after the first round series in Nashville, they beat them pretty handily. It was in a 4-game sweep, and we were sitting here not questioning, but saying, hey, the rest factor. I think every time it's somebody closes out a series early, you always say the rest, or they can come out rusty, or they come out pick up where they left off. They've shown no signs of rust at all. They've had series that they've ended quickly. They put St. Louis pushed them a little bit, pushed them in 6 games. They come out and wipe the floor with Edmonton. They pretty much did. So Colorado's they faced a lot, and they have not shown that they're going to waver with anything. And I can't really say the same with these 2. I keep sticking up for Tampa Bay, but they don't really look like they had the last 2 years. They got to this point because of their experience, and I keep saying with the Rangers, if this ends up going 7, that's 3 straight 7-game series. and that's
21 games
and then
in a
you're going to go
month.
up against a team like Colorado. That's tough, and against a team that with the Rangers that they play good defense, they have good goaltending, but they're not going to. They're not going to keep up with Colorado in the scoring department.
And by the
That's
way,
just
if this series does go to 7 games, and that would bring New York's total to 21, they would have played a fourth of the regular season. That's 25.6%
in a
of
month
what
and a
the
half.
regular season is to already add on top of that, which
Yeah,
in total would be 103 games played to this point
in a
if
month and a
this
half.
goes 7.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that part of it, I mean, they've shown us that that playing all these games in a row, it hasn't really bothered them, but it's going to catch up to them at some point when you're going up against a team like Colorado that can put the puck in the net like it's nothing.
That's true. So we're obviously going to make more in-depth predictions on it tomorrow, Mike. But how about we look a little bit more at Game 4? Tampa
Yeah.
dominated first 2 periods, didn't allow a goal. New York finally gets one in the third, but Tampa cruises in 2 more goals in that fourth period and takes this one 4-1. Do you think this can carry over some momentum into that next game when they're going to be playing on the road? Can they keep this offense up on the road?
I think they can, and I think it's important to jump on. Like I said, in this game, they jumped on Shesterkin early, and I think that's the key when you're trying to beat the Rangers. Teams have done that in the last 2 series, but they haven't done it consistently throughout the whole series, and Tampa hasn't either. But when you find a way to get to him early, especially when a good offensive team like Pittsburgh was good offense. They've faced a lot of every good offensive team they played so far. Pittsburgh, Carolina, and Tampa, they all have good offenses. And when you find something in a series that you can get on Shesterkin early, the Rangers don't have that type of offense that's going to keep up with it. They're going to grind you out and get some goals, but they're not, and they're going to be physical with you, but they're not going to outscore you that way. They're going to make you earn your goals. And I think, last night they found a way to. They didn't get out to a trailing lead like they did in game 3 at Tampa Bay. They found a way to get out early, and that's the key to beat the Rangers. That's what I noticed from last night. The big part of it.
Okay, I didn't get a chance to watch that game. I was busy elsewhere, but I'm taking your word for it on this one because that's kind of been every time New York's been bad, they've kind of struggled early on. The other team catches that momentum and they can ride it for the rest of the game. And I'm interested to see what that translates to going into Game 5.
And as good as Shesterkin is, he's been a roller coaster in these playoffs. He's had some great games. He's had some bad games where he's gotten pulled in some games. And I think teams, especially a veteran team like this with Tampa, they know that, and they're going to capitalize on it, and they're going to get to him early. And they didn't put a whole lot of shots on goal last night. I think they had about 30, 35. So, I mean, you got 4 across. It's pretty good, but you just got to continue to get on them early. That's a big thing.
Yeah, and I mean, on the other side of this, when you look at, Vasilevsky, he really hasn't been bad this entire postseason. He's had a couple of questionable games, the 5 goals in 2 different games against the Maple Leafs. 4 isn't bad, but they limited that Panthers offense the entire postseason in that entire second series and only allowed 3 goals in 4 games, which was phenomenal. And then it did come around. Rangers got 6 goals on him, or 6 goals in that game 1. He ends up getting pulled. But the last 3 games, despite the 3 given up in game 2, I think Vasilevsky has kind of turned this up to a different notch now that he's playing in the conference finals. I think, game 1, it got away from him a little bit. I think he came in a little bit cocky after allowing just the 3 goals in the prior one, and, things added up quickly on him. But these last 3 games, I mean, I think you've really seen a shift in mentality for Vasilevsky between the pipes. I think he's been a lot better. I mean, he's only allowing 2 goals per game. And with the offense right now, the Lightning, that is very manageable for them. I want to see that get a little bit better, bring that under that 2 mark. And, even if it's 1.5 by the time this series ends, Vasilevsky looks to be the guy that can continue to lead this team defensively, even if he's only between the pipes.
Yeah, I keep hitting on with Tampa Bay that they're big 3 guys like Pat Maroon. They got guys like that that's been their last couple of years, and these guys are stepping up for them. That's what makes Tampa hard to beat. Is when you're not really hearing too much from Stamkos and these other guys. They have guys like Pat Maroon that's going to step up. That's going to. I think he had a goal last night if I remember correctly, but they're just deep, and I think both these teams are deep. That's why this is a 2-2 series right now. Why we think it could go 6 or it's going to go 6, but why we think it can go 7 because both teams are deep, and you're seeing experience go up against youth, and I think neither one are backing down.
Well, either way, it should be an exciting finish. We'll give the predictions for that one on tomorrow's episode. But, Mike, let's take this into the NBA today. Series tied 1-1 between Golden State and Boston. Now they head back into the TD Garden out there for game 3. Boston, to me, despite the fact they lost, I think still has momentum on their side because they did the most important thing you can do in the first 2 games of a series: just take one. And they did just that. So I think coming into it, back into this at home, I think they have some momentum on their side, and they need to get their guys going again like we saw in game 1 because their defense has been there. They need to help. They need to work on that third quarter, but I think the best game plan for Boston is to realize that third quarter is going to happen. We need to work better in the first, second, and fourth to ensure that third quarter doesn't kill us.
Because it doesn't matter where they're playing at Golden State. That's their bread and butter. And I
And the
think
third quarter is the put away quarter. And that's why it's been so important. The last 7 years of sports, I've been yelling, it's that third quarter. That's because of what Golden State can do.
and I think as much as I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, but I keep hearing people say it's, Boston did do their job. They got one on the road. I agree with that. But I keep hearing people say that, now going back home, it's all momentum's pretty much on their side. I don't know if I agree with that because as good as they can be at home, they lose a good amount of big games at home. They could have closed out Miami at home in Game 6. They lost. They lost Game 1 in Milwaukee at home. They're beatable in that place. As hard as it is to play there with their fan base, they're beatable there. And I think outside of that, I said this yesterday. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but outside of that the fourth quarter in Game 1, to me, Golden State's been the best team so far outside of that first quarter. And they don't even have Klay Thompson on yet. That's what sticks out for me a lot.
I think that's a fair assessment. My counter to that, though, is Boston, great at home this season. I just pulled up the splits. 28-13 at home this season. Golden State was 31-10 as well. But on the road, Golden State is barely over 500, which was a similar thing we saw out of Boston. Boston at home was 23-18. Golden State was 22-19. Neither team is a great road team. They're both expert home teams. So to me, having Boston take that game on the road was the first step to this because now they get a chance. They get to go back home and defend that court in which they have done so expertly this season. A 28-13 record is just about as good as you can ask for going for your home and away splits. That's kind of something you're aiming for. That's about a 2-1 type number in there. So that's something I think you live with Boston. You know what you're getting out of them. They're going to win it 68% of the time when they play at home. That's a great number to go up against when you're only working on a 50-50 shot for the other side based on the numbers alone. Now the eye test completely changes that up and what you're seeing and how that all works. We know the eye test is going to have Golden State as a better team every single time they're out there on the floor. But if you're looking at the numbers, which everybody knows I love to do, I love to look at what the numbers are telling me. The numbers are telling me Boston in these next 2 games needs to play the way they've done all season, and they're going to come out of this 3-1. And that is huge for the Celtics in this series to be able to do. And worst case scenario for Boston, their worst case that they can afford is to split this 1-1. But I think if this goes 1-1 and Boston can't defend home floor, they have no shot at winning this series.
Yeah, I agree. And as much as I'm not saying they're terrible at home. It just seems that a trend. That's why I remember when I picked Game 6 against Miami, I was kind of saying I just feel like Miami's going to come in there and win because sometimes it tends that Boston does lose big games at home, and they ended up losing that game to Miami. And it's just as much as they do play good at home with that fan base, I feel like these playoffs they played better on the road. They took 3 in that series against Miami. They took, I think, 2 in the Milwaukee series. I know it was at least 2. And they took 2 on the road in Brooklyn. So they played really well in the road this series. And they took Game 1 in Golden State. But, as good as I'm saying Boston is on the road, Golden State loves playing on the road. They do. They love to go in there, snatch your heart right out of your chest. And they do. That third quarter is going to be huge. I don't want to keep repeating myself with the third quarter with this team, but that's where they win games. They come out, it doesn't matter, on the road, at home, they do that in the third quarter. And I think, like you're saying, if Boston could outwork them in the other quarters, the other 3 quarters, they could put themselves in a really good chance to win both these games at home.
Yeah, I mean, Golden State right now, I think they have momentum coming off the game too, and as I said, eye test is always going to have Golden State as the
Yeah.
better team. But there's something about this Boston team that feels different than years past. Getting here to the finals, one is kind of the big thing for me. That this has been a shift in mentality for this team, and I think you do kind of have to step aside and put years past out of your mind because they were working with Jason Tatum, who was 22 and 21 and 2019, straight out of college, freshman out there. Then you had a young Jaylen Brown, very young squads the last couple of years. They were working with the cripple Gordon Hayward, drama queen Kyrie Irving. They've had a lot of turmoil and turnover inside of the organization these last couple of years. But what hasn't staggered is their ability to win at home, inside of the TD Garden, in front of their fans. It has been a big thing that they win at home. And I know in the postseason they have struggled the last couple of years to be able to close things out home. I mean, they had a couple of chances against Cleveland. They've had other chances in the postseason, and they do tend to struggle at home. But I think this is a different team this year and a different mentality they're being able to bring to the court. And I think that makes them dangerous now because this is a team that I think finally knows they are supposed to be here. I think they've kind of been like, ooh, we deserve to be in the NBA Finals. We're the Boston Celtics. And, kind of just, they think they should be there. This is the first time I saw this team go out there and perform like they should be in the NBA Finals. And that was game one for me. They came out there and, say what you will about, Golden State pretty much won every quarter. I don't care. If you don't win the game, winning quarters doesn't matter. That's something we saw in the Miami series. Boston won the quarters, but Miami was winning the games. So it's this switch up for me. Boston is here. They understand what they're facing. This isn't a mystery to them. They know Golden State is going to be bringing it. They know Golden State's going to win that third quarter. There is no deniability of it. But this team has a different mindset now, and you saw that in game one. They have confidence in themselves. I hope that carries back into this game because they lost it at the end of game two. I'll be frank, they completely lost any confidence they had in scoring the basketball in that third quarter. They have to eliminate from their mindset and get back into what got them to this point, and that was playing great at home. And Boston has been great at home for nearly the last decade. They haven't had a losing record at home since the 2013-2014 NBA season. If that doesn't paint the picture for you, I don't know what will, because at that point, the Cleveland Cavaliers were 33-49, and the San Antonio Spurs were the number one seed in the Western Conference, and the Utah Jazz and the Los Angeles Lakers were 20-win teams. So it has been a long time since Boston has been bad at home. I don't expect them to lose in this postseason at home. This is the TD Garden. This is where they play their best. And we saw their best in game one is good enough to beat Golden State, even on a good Golden State day.
As much as I agree, you are right. This is a different Celtics team, especially since the beginning of January. They've been a 100% different team. But I still have not seen, I said this yesterday, I want to see Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown play good together in back-to-back games. And I haven't seen that. And I think, that's what's going to win them games. And that's what's going to really make them unbeatable is when they really can do it consistently. And I think that's the big eye test for me is I know, like I said, the only issue with Golden State right now is Klay's not shooting the ball well. And we know he's going to break out of that. And I just think that's, if you're going to go off the trend, yeah, Boston's due for a good game tonight. Because Jason Tatum had a good game in the first half, but the second half was bad. So if you're going off that trend, yeah, they're going to come out tonight and play good. But I want to see that happen consistently because I know what I'm going to get. I know it's different Golden State team. I know it's different, but they still are led by the same people. And I know that consistency factor, I know what I'm going to get out of that part of it. But it's tough because it is tough to play there, but you're going up against a team it's just hard. It's hard to pick this game right now for me in these next two games because I picked the series to go 6, maybe even 7. That part of it, yeah, it should be a split tonight, or in these next two games, but it's going to be tough.
And, as much as I am talking about Boston, they're a great home team during the regular season. You were pointing out here in this postseason, they haven't looked great. They lost, 2 games to the Bucks at home, 2 games to the Heat at home. Every other game at home has been close. But to me, I think that was the breaking through point for this Boston team, trying to get to that NBA Finals. I think there was a couple times in that Miami Heat series they got ahead of themselves. They could have closed that thing out. It should not have gone as deep as it did. They should have closed it out a lot earlier. They got ahead of themselves. Versus Milwaukee, I'm giving credit to Milwaukee and that defending champions. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's gonna come out and he's gonna ball. He's a straight up baller, and he's one of, if not the best player in the NBA today. So I'm giving credit to Milwaukee. I think it's all about basketball is such a mental sport, and as much
Yeah,
as
it
we
is.
talk about you have to be great shooters, how many times do we see bad shooters have some of the greatest nights in this NBA scoring history? I mean, we've seen just absolute outstanding performances from Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray just a couple years ago in the NBA playoffs. Two guys that don't really have mega scoring nights. How about TJ Warren from back in the bubble as well, going off for 50 points for the Indiana Pacers? There are certain times that throw stats out the window, throw numbers out the window. Who cares? The NBA Finals is not about stats as much as that pains me to say. It ain't about stats. It's about you believing in yourself and your teammates to get the job done. And that is the biggest difference I've seen with Boston this season compared to the last couple. They finally believe in each other. There isn't one guy that's going out there and trying to, play God or be Michael Jordan. They're a team. And I think that's the biggest reason why somebody has finally looked like they've challenged Golden State in a way I don't think we've seen before. Because Golden State's played a lot of individuals. Kawhi, LeBron, Kyrie, Kevin Love, JR, Kyle Lowry, Siakam. Great players on good teams. This is the first time I think they've played good players on a great team. And that's the big switch up for me with this Boston squad and why they were able to win one on the road. They're 8-3 in road games right now. So even if they do end up losing and split this 1-1 back here in the TD Garden, I'm not 100% confident that Golden State can take this series against them with how great they've played on the road.
That's a fair point about the team part of it. I agree with that part. That's a good part you brought up about who they faced in the past.
This year for Boston, and I feel like we have that tendency a lot here on the show to kind of look in the past to see what we've seen out of these teams before. But I think as you and I know, watching the NBA Finals this last couple of years, it means diddly squat what you did in the regular season. It means absolutely nothing what you did in the run-up to the NBA Finals. All that matters is what do you have now. And Golden State has great shooting, but one of their key pieces, and this is no understatement, Klay Thompson is a key factor of this offense because you're not getting 30 points out of Jordan Poole every night. That is a rarity from him. He's a great up-and-coming player, and I'm sure he'll get there someday. But this is not his time yet. He's great. He's up-and-coming. I'm excited to see what happens out of him. But Klay Thompson is the reason this team hasn't been here in the last 2 years. His injuries and Steph's injuries pulled this team down to rock bottom. Literally, they were the worst team in the NBA. And even when Steph was there and Klay wasn't, this team wasn't good. And obviously, they were still very young. They brought back more. They brought in Wiggins. They got a better team than they did those last 2 years. I'm not discounting that. But Klay Thompson, if he was there, Golden State still would have been the favorites to win it these last 2 seasons to start out the year instead of them being in last place and fighting for a lottery pick. Klay Thompson, much like I said, Jaylen Brown, I think gets the offense going for Boston, even though Jason Tatum is their superstar, undoubtedly. I think Steph Curry is the superstar of Golden State, but if Klay Thompson goes, so do the Warriors.
Well, that part of it,
pieces of these offenses.
That part with Klay, I agree with, because that first half is, I know Golden State had a 2-point lead at halftime, and they were winning those quarters. I know we talked about quarters the last couple of series, but it felt like they weren't winning because Klay wasn't doing what Klay does.
Right.
And that was a big thing. I felt like they were trying to grind things out because I know they eventually found a way to pour it on in third, but it's just you don't really feel too confident with them or feel like they're playing their best because Klay's not doing it. And I think he's going to snap out of it. It's great as a shooter he is. We know great players snap out of it. It doesn't last long. But with my biggest thing is when I'm picking Golden State in these series this year, when I've been talking them up all year, I'm not really trying to base it off of what they've done in the last few years. Because I know players are getting older. They have different personnel, but it just the other game two really added to my what I've been saying all year. When they start launching 40-foot bombs like they can still do, and they can probably do till they retire, you can't compete with that, and it messes with your. We've seen. I think JJ Redick was talking about this on ESPN when some of the games he played against Golden State when they start doing that. It literally messes with your mind. It's like you just throw your hands up in the sky like we can't beat this team. That's why I've been on them all year. I'm not trying to base it off the past. I know Boston's a really good team that changed things around, but it just to me it doesn't matter when they do that stuff because we know they're gonna come out in the third quarter and do this stuff, and it happens anyways.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment right there. And I think one of the big things I want to see in game three is Boston get physical with Draymond Green.
Yeah.
Marcus Smart, I think, needs to start out this game just going up there, putting his chest right onto Draymond's and just start talking some crap right to him because Draymond's going to snap right back. He won't take that. He's a straight up stone cold killer out there on the floor. He's ready to throw hands at a moment's notice. And I think they need to get Draymond Green into technical foul trouble because I don't think he's that far from getting a suspension in the series. And I know that seems like a weird way to go with this of, oh, you want that guy off the floor, but is it not a strategy when a guy has 3 or 4 fouls in a game to try and get him into foul trouble and get him out of it? That's the same thing we're seeing with Draymond Green. He's in foul trouble, but he's in a worse foul trouble because it could cost him playing an entire game in this series. That's what cost Golden State their series back in 2016 against LeBron. Draymond got suspended for too many technical fouls, and he's in danger of doing that again. Someone's got to match him out there. Someone's got to go in there and force him to make those mistakes. And just someone's got to annoy the annoyer. And that's the biggest thing. It's all about mentality with Golden State. They can beat you because in their minds, they know they're better than you. In every single way, they know they're better than you. And that comes, especially on the defensive side, from Draymond Green. When Draymond has a bad night defensively, they are not as good when Draymond Green is not on.
Yeah, and I think a big thing, I'm just to go back off of what you were just saying, we saw Draymond Green. I said this yesterday. We saw him come out, and I know he's not going to score a lot of points. That's not who he is. But from the mindset standpoint and from being physical, he came out and set the tone early. And it didn't feel like it right away because they didn't have big leads and they were trying to grind things out and Clay wasn't playing well. But he came out and set the tone. I want to see Marcus Smart do that tonight because you're in your own building now. You saw what he did, and I think he's going to because he's talking about. I know talk is cheap till you actually do it, but he's sitting there in these interviews leading up to Game 3 tonight. We got to come out and match the physicality. And I think if anybody's going to do it on Boston, it's going to be Marcus Smart because they don't really have a whole lot of tough guys, and he is their tough guy. So I think that's a big part of what you brought up.
Or I need Al Horford to put his elbows in the damn rim.
There's a way to be physical.
Draymond Green is underneath it when you do it.
Yeah, and there's a way to be physical without getting, thrown out of games and being just like you said, just not somebody with an elbow. I wouldn't
mind if we started off the game with a double technical. I'm not gonna lie. If we go tip off and Marcus Smart is just running right up to Draymond Green, or even if it's before the game, get something, get that fire going. See if they can get the. I think the biggest thing, Boston needs to find a way to get that crowd behind them early. Get that crowd going. Get them engaged in this thing. Win the first quarter, and Boston can win this game. If they can take this first quarter by 5 or 6 points, that's all I'm asking. 5 or 6 points in this first quarter. Get that crowd into it for this first half of basketball and win that first half. And Boston can take this game because that crowd is a difference maker for Boston.
Well, to talk about difference, I think it's a difference between Boston coming out and being physical and playing their game instead of just coming out and trying to be physical and trying to egg on Draymond to try to get another technical. Because if to me, if you come out and try to egg him on and focus on him trying to go on a big outburst, that's advantage Golden State because you're not going to beat them that way. They know they've had teams try to do that in the past. You can't, like you said, you can't really outsmart the smarter people like them. Just come out and be physical and play your game, and let it go. If he goes off and if you play that way and he goes off, that's on him. Then don't come out and try to we're just going to go target him right away. Like you said, come out with a big lead. Don't poke the bear and come out with a big lead. Like you said, use your home court. Come out and set the tone. Go on start out with a 10-2 lead or something like that. That's to me how Boston's going to win the game. Be physical, but don't come out and, like I said, don't just make him your priority.
I see your point there, but I don't know. I still just want somebody to punch him in the jaw a little bit,
See, I couldn't stand Draymond back in the day. It's over with his team overall, but I do kind of like the way he goes off. It's funny now. It's
I,
funny to watch.
I like it, but I think sometimes he gets away with too much, and someone needs to kind of put him back in his place there. He's tending to think he's Bill Laimbeer or something from back in the day, and that he's this untouchable big man out there. I just need somebody just to, even if it's not getting punched in the face, I need somebody to posterize this dude, put him back down on his level. He thinks he's some 7 foot, just straight up, muscle man out there, and he's not. He's only like 6'8". Someone needs to go out there and put him on a poster.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got to win the mental edge against Golden State somehow, some way. You got to beat them down mentally because you're not going to beat them physically.
but I think it's sometimes too, and players get caught up in one little thing sets them off. I feel like sometimes got to have thick skin. Just don't shut them up. Don't listen to what they're saying. Just play your game. I feel like too many
I think
players.
that's one of the big problems though with Boston because of how young they are. They haven't
Yeah,
they haven't developed that thick skin. They got pretty thick skin because it's Boston, and in that crowd will make you grow that thick skin quickly. But I don't think they have that fully developed, and I think that's definitely something we've been seeing because I think much like Trae Young in the playoffs last year when he was balling in the Square Garden against the New York Knicks, he was playing the bad guy. He's feeding off that energy of the crowd being against him, and he kind of struggled back at home a little bit, and we kind of saw that this year when they weren't able to really get to the postseason. Or they got to the postseason, they did nothing. But I think you've seen something similar with Boston. When, like I said, 8-3 on the road in this postseason, and I think part of that is they're feeding off the energy of that crowd booing them, and that's why they've been a little bit more sluggish at home. And I don't think that's going to grow overnight. So you got to play with what you got. Feed off that energy, and if anything, if they have a bad first quarter and that crowd starts booing them, maybe that's what they really need. That crowd to, instead of get behind them, start, getting in front of them and screaming at them because they're right there on the benches. If that crowd can start getting in their own team's mind, from what we've seen in this postseason, that's the way to go for Boston. They almost need a worse first quarter then.
Oh, and Boston is capable of doing that. Believe me.
Exactly.
Boston's
That's what I'm saying. All you need is a bad first 5 minutes. Not even first quarter, just bad first 5. Put up 1 or 2, just enough to kind of keep them within 10 of Golden State in that first 5 minutes. Let that crowd just start getting mean. Just flat out screaming and everything. They need to get some bad foul calls early on. Get that crowd engaged, screaming at them. If that crowd gets angry, I think it makes the Celtics a better team.
Yeah, I agree. And the only really
fan base what we've seen.
Really, the only fan base that's worse than that is the Philadelphia fan base. They don't need a whole quarter. They'll jump on you 2 minutes. They don't care about that. They'll jump on you right away. And
Mike, they win a game and they still complain.
Exactly. That's the difference. But
you only won by 3. We should have won it by 20.
I'll admit I do that sometimes.
Yeah,
we're all guilty of that. But
they take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and with the part with the mental aspect and being, you can't just if you're going to develop it, it takes time. Most guys are just born like that. Like Draymond Green has been like this even in college. And I think what you're saying is Boston might get it soon, but they don't have it right now. And
right.
Like you said, I think they do have it on the road, but let's see if they do have it at home and they hit a little bit of adversity and they, if a couple foul calls don't go in the way, and they start
going to be the big test here at home because they're not going to get getting punched in the mouth in Golden State with that third quarter in the last game. I don't think is going to compare to what that could be at home. When not only is the team they're playing going to be against them, but then that crowd's going to turn on them too.
And I think the big thing for Boston is if they come home and start out tonight thinking, "Oh, we're just going to come out and win this game because we did our job and one split the first 2 on the road. We're good. We're home. We're good. And we're good for now." You can't do that because if you come out with that mindset, look out early.
Yeah,
you got to come out and like I said, because Golden State's going to have their third quarter. You got to come out from the first, second, and fourth quarter and play your game. If they go in there running the third quarter, that's fine. As long as you're playing good the rest of the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to see what happens, but let's go ahead and flip this over to let's make our picks first here back at home, Game 3. Mike, I think I know which way you're going to go with this, but make your pick tonight, 9 p.m. in Boston, Game 3. Who you got?
So, like I said, I think there's going to be split in these first two in Boston. I'm going to pick Boston to win Game 4. I'm going to go Golden State tonight.
You're going Golden State tonight.
Hmm.
My only thing is with this is teams losing back to back. I don't know how much we're going to see a team lose back to back in this series. I really think it's going to be a back and forth type thing because to me, if Golden State takes game 3, game 4 might as well be theirs as well. I think if they take game 3 in a similar fashion as well they did to game 2, Boston's going to be completely disheartened. This game ends in 5 like I predicted it would if Boston won game 1. But game 3, I don't think Boston can afford to lose it. And, from the beginning of this postseason, you picked Golden State, I picked Boston, and here they are. And I'm going Boston again against your Warriors here in this postseason. I got the Celtics winning at home. They need it more. And sometimes it's just the team that needs it can do it.
Yeah, and I think tonight's going to be a night Klay Thompson snaps out of a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be big.
I think Klay Thompson snaps out of it, but I think you see Draymond and Wiggins go cold tonight.
I could see Draymond scoring
going off as well. I think you get Thompson, Klay, and Poole going better numbers tonight than what we've seen, and it's Draymond and Wiggins that got cold because I think Wiggins is a huge part of this offense and kind of sometimes a quiet one because you hand him the ball, and this team has always just been a team of layups, sometimes some Draymond will, dunk the basketball. They're not a big high-flying team, but now you've introduced this high flyer to the offense, and he can really turn momentum on its side when he just goes up there, takes it one hand, tomahawk, slams it down.
Yeah, I agree with the part about Wiggins because I think he's played good in these first 2 games. People just really haven't talked about it.
Yeah.
I think he's played good in this, really, like you said, the whole playoff so far. And
the entire season for Golden State, he's a perfect fit in there.
This guy was an all-star starter. People forget that, too. This past year. And I think he's played well. He's fit them a lot well. I could see Draymond maybe having like 7, 8, 9-point game tonight. But I feel like tonight might be the game, Klay, because as much as I keep saying Golden State plays good on the road, he's one of their players that does play well on the road over his career, especially in the playoffs. Yeah. Go back to that Game 6 performance against the Thunder that he said he was going to watch on the plane to try to get himself going. So I think tonight might be the game maybe not, it's going to be a huge performance, but better than what it has been the last 2 games. I think maybe a 20-point game tonight.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to find out how things go. I got Boston, you got the GSWs, but let's take it over into baseball. Mike, your team's having a fun one right now against the Tigers, tied up at 1 on the top of the 8th.
This is the Jim Leland Cup. They were talking about it on the broadcast that they were going to – this is actually a funny part, because he managed both these teams.
Right.
They were going to – I don't know if this is a real thing, but I heard that they're going to make like a gold ashtray because he smokes. Whoever wins the series, they're going to give that to them to keep that for the whole year.
I hate
year.
that.
That's kind of funny.
It's hilarious, but that is just okay. The
not
golden
used.
ashtray.
It's pretty much like a bowl, like a trophy bowl, not like an actual ashtray. Come on.
Well, I got a feeling whoever's winning it's going to be smoking some cigars back there and putting it in this
absolutely
cup. You just got to at that point, right?
And if the Pirates win this, they'd split the 4-game series this year. So I think they said that whoever had the highest run total that'd be the tiebreaker. But no, I mean it's tied right now. It's in the 8th. Both it's been a pitcher's duel. So if you like that, you often see that on day game, afternoon game. So that's I like the low pitching matchups. I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the only game really going on right now. So.
Well, we got another one going on as well. End of the first, Kansas City's actually pulling one over the eyes of the Blue Jays. They're up 3-0 right now after 1 inning. So. Great start in that game for Kansas City. But if you want to go check it out on my Twitter page at Alec Caberna, I put out another week of the Major League Baseball power rankings, all 3 different categories of it.
Let's hear it.
And once again, I got Yankees at number 1, Mike. They've been the hottest team in baseball. And maybe the biggest shocker, I have the Dodgers at 24th in baseball despite their record. But what they've done in the last 10, they're falling apart.
Especially, the last week or so, 10 games, the last 2 weeks, they have not played well. And I think, I agree with you about the Yankees being number 1 because they consistently have been the best team. And they have the MVP favorite right now with Aaron Judge, who I think he just hit his 21st or 22nd home run last night. That's insane to this point.
He starts stepping up to that billing. It took a couple of years to get here, but I'm glad he's finally stepping into it. I hope it stays up because he's been good up to the All-Star break before and then completely fallen off. I want to see him carry this through the whole season now.
it's not like as much as he does have a ton of home runs right now. It's not like that's all he's doing. I think that's the
Right.
reason why he is the MVP candidate right now. I think that's why it's different than his rookie year. Well, his rookie year he was just hitting a bunch of home runs, and like you said, he did fall off. I think they made the playoffs his rookie year, but he did fall off at that point, and he's really haven't done that. They, as much as I can't stand the Yankees for getting all these stars, they surrounded him with good players. You got to give him credit for that part of it. And I think they really do have a team this year that feels good about where they're at. And same with the other New York team. That's why I was talking about them yesterday. They haven't fallen apart yet.
Yeah, 100%. But, you know, I think a big thing right now to watch out for in baseball is this American League wild card race. We're having an awesome battle going on right now between 7 teams. It's really tightened up with some of these teams going on slumps. Anaheim Angels, despite the fact that one, I have them down as the worst team right now in baseball via the power ranking side of it, losing 13 in a row. They're still sitting primed and ready for the first wild card spot. They still have that locked up, 3.5 games ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays, who are right now in third. Tampa Bay is the number 2 team in the power in the American League wildcard race. Obviously, a long way to go. Teams behind them are the White Sox, 1.5 games back. The Red Sox are 2.5 games back. The Guardians at -3. And the Texas Rangers, don't look now. They're heating up, Mike. They're only 4 games back from the wild card. Now it's not looking like such a dumb dark horse.
By the way, did they win game 2 last night with Cleveland?
What was that?
Did they? I know they had a doubleheader yesterday with Cleveland. I know they lost the first one. Did they win the second one?
Um,
I know they lost
did
the first one
not
like
watch.
6-3 or something like that. I just knew they had a doubleheader.
First game went to Cleveland 6-3. Second game went to the Rangers 6-3.
Yeah, I want you to be right. The Rangers are a team that they've had good teams in these last couple years. They just haven't done anything. So I want your prediction to be right. I'm rooting for you on that part.
I know, because you know what, the Phillies, their team, they're starting to streak as well. They're getting up there. I had the Phillies at number 13 in the power rankings. I had the Guardians up at number 7. They have their record is 7-3 in their last 10 games. I know things have been evening up a little bit. They lost their last time out, but I think they're a team. They're in prime position right now to jump over the White Sox, who, by the way, have won their last 3 now.
Yeah, Cleveland's had a good week. They've had a really good week, and it's the point. You know, when you start out in that first couple weeks losing 7 in a row like they did, it's going to take a while to get back, and they're starting to slowly build back. I know they're a game under 500 right now. That first one yesterday put them at 500, but just stay where you are right now, because we talked about yesterday that they had that 7-game losing streak. They're a game under 500 right now, but they're still, forget about the wild card, they're still in striking distance for the division title. So just keep playing around 500 ball, and then eventually you break through and maybe get on a run.
Yeah, and the thing is with Cleveland, their bullpen's getting better. They put Eli Morgan from one of our starting pitchers now into the bullpen, and he is turning into the best reliever in the Cleveland Guardians bullpen this season. And there wasn't a lot of depth. It's one of the things I didn't really like about the bullpen this year for Cleveland, is they didn't feel very deep, but now, they got Eli Morgan going. Cal Quantrill's got his stuff rolling out, and it's only a matter of time before this rest of the bullpen starts clicking too. It's something that happens every single year with Cleveland. They always have a good bullpen, despite what they may or may not have when it comes to being able to hit the baseball, which, by the way, they're doing good at this year, a lot better than years past. I think from these 7 teams in the wild card race, Angels, Rays, Blue Jays, White Sox, Red Sox, Guardians, Rangers, my favorite teams, I think, to make a run to steal those away, probably Blue Jays and Guardians. I had the Blue Jays right now, number 2. They're streaking in the power rankings, and the Guardians at 7. White Sox I had up there at 3rd, and they're definitely a team to continue to watch out for. I think they have a good chance of making that run, but even a team like the Chicago White Sox, I had them down at 19th. They've won their last couple, but outside of that, they've just been okay. I like the Rangers, and I hope they do something, because that would just be fun for that prediction. But I think with the struggles you've seen out of the Angels, they still have a great record, but I think it's turning around. I mean, 27-30, and things are going to start falling off for them here pretty quickly if they can't turn this around. I mean, 13 losses in a row. We were, making fun of Cincinnati earlier in the season when they did this. So I think you got to give that same number to the Angels. They're falling off, and they're on a downward spiral, and I don't know how they fix it. Well, I guess we'll see if the firing of Joe Madden will do anything, but I don't know what else they can do.
I can give you a list
of things back-to-back days we've had a firing in baseball at the head coach position.
Yeah. The big thing you could do is start actually hitting the ball, number one.
Yeah.
And, their pitching staff, it's hit or miss. We knew that coming in, but their bullpen's been absolutely terrible. I know we talked about the White Sox bullpen being not what it was last year, but to me, really no bullpen right now is worse than what the Angels have been doing these last 13 games. And I agree with you. We made fun of Cincinnati. We got to really start putting the hammer down on these Angels because we've been talking about they haven't been putting stuff around Mike Trout. I said this yesterday. At some point, it's got to be on him now. At some point, it's got to be on him because you can't keep giving him excuses. We know how great he is, but when his teams need him these last 2 weeks, he has not done anything.
Yeah. And other news in baseball right now, Verlander continues to add on to a Hall of Fame career. He is now 17th all-time in strikeouts in Major League Baseball history and has also become the active strikeout leader in baseball, passing Max Scherzer right now.
After he missed, a year or two?
Yeah. So, but still, the fact that, Verlander, he's still hanging around. It's amazing to see because, this was a pitcher from, early 2000s that I had growing up, and he was one of those best young arms, and no way I would have thought he would be here 20 years later.
This guy was on the cover of 2K when I was playing 2K when I was little, when they used to make it for baseball. And he's still dominating.
You played Major League Baseball 2K?
I played the show too, but I used to play 2K before I stopped making it. What's wrong with that? The show's way better.
I played the 2K ones. They are just the worst baseball games.
Well, that's the only one I had, though, was the one with him on the cover. I didn't even buy it. I got it. My friend gave it to me because he didn't want it. I guess that means it was bad, but...
I think one of the only 2Ks I had was on a PlayStation Portable, so that's definitely an interesting one to have. But, Verlander, what an epic career he's had. He's been in since 2005, now has 3,086 strikeouts.
And you know
Just
what?
Amazing.
The question that comes to my mind is I know with the Cardinals they have Adam Wainwright, and I know they have guys retiring this year with Pujols and Molina, but it's hard to see Adam Wainwright really stepping away right now because he's pitching not on Justin Verlander level, but for their age, they're pitching top tier in baseball right now. It's hard to picture them both walking away. Not Verlander as much, but because I think he still has more to go. But with Wainwright and some of these other older pitchers, it's hard to really imagine them because they're still doing it right now at these back ends of their career, and it's hard to imagine any of them stepping away.
Verlander, by the way, right now in Major League this year stands 9th in strikeouts on the season with 73. Number one is Shane McClanahan of Tampa with 89, who's also just killing it, by the way. Corbin Burns as well from Milwaukee has 84.
Yep. By the way, that pitching staff in Milwaukee I've been talking about. That's the reason why I've viewed them to not only win the NL Central, but maybe do something in the playoffs because these teams they have not had top tier pitching. They have three-headed monster with those three guys.
I just got to point this out there as well that I might just have to go buy a Toronto Blue Jays jersey that is Alek Manoah's because this is the first time in my entire life I've seen a professional athlete with the first name Alex spelled exactly the same as mine. So I might just have to go pull that trigger and buy his jersey because he's also tied right now for first place with most wins by a starter in baseball this year with 7.
Yeah, I was going to say Alec Boehm for the Phillies, but his with a C at the end, not a K.
Yeah, okay.
Because there's
waiting. A lot of Alex with the C's. I've seen those, but it's never A-L-E-K. And having him step up this season, I'm just like, yes, finally. Because I think he got the call up last year, and he was making a great start when he got called up. And this season, he's been on a tear. I love it.
We got to get you the jersey then.
Right, I gotta. It's the only time it's ever happened. I gotta do it.
You gotta capitalize on it, man. See, my name's common all the time. Right. Everybody's name's Mike.
Be like Mike.
Yeah. One of the greats. But
you gotta be like Alec. Be rare. Boom.
That's why nobody's like you.
Yeah.
Because it's rare. That's why we like you.
But other big news, and this goes back to the Texas Rangers right now. Semien went big. Marcus Semien had a performance not seen since 1973. He had 3 home runs and 7 hits against Cleveland. He went off, man. He tied a franchise records for hits in a doubleheader, and he did this in the combined 2 games between Cleveland, but still, this performance for Semien, but he's getting up there in age, I believe, for
A
his
little
career,
bit. Yeah,
a
he's
little
been
bit,
around.
but just to see what that does for this team, the fact that they've been terrible this year, and I think out of any team that we were picking beginning of the season for dark horses, Rangers were the farthest one out there of teams. I mean, Phillies and Brewers. Phillies was a good pick. I'll give you that one.
Not
Brewers
now.
was a safe pick from you though. That was
Was
playing a
that
little
mine? I
bit.
don't even remember.
Yeah, I took the rant. I still have the sticky note. I wrote it down on. I've had it on my
Oh.
desk the entire year. I took the Rangers. You took the Brewers, and Matt took the Phillies. And I gotta say, I'm loving my Rangers pick right now. This
Well,
is
in my
exactly what I was
defense,
hoping for.
on regular season, it's easy for the Brewers. But when I was picking that part of it, I was thinking about who can do something in the playoffs because they've gotten in the last couple years and haven't done anything. That part of it's why I picked them. But the Rangers
they've also been dealing with the injuries of Yelich as well, and that's a big one. But I mean, you picked your dark horse, Milwaukee, who won their division with 95 wins last year. So
and nobody talked about
I know what you were going for. I just got to throw that out.
and nobody talked about him either last year.
Right.
That's
I mean, Matt also went with the Phillies, who were 82 and 80, and just missed out on a wild card spot because of the amazing AL East last year.
Yeah, you went a little into it more with the Rangers.
I went with the team that had 102 losses. They lost the second or third most games in baseball last year. Screw that. That's a dark horse.
They lost more than my team last year.
What was that?
They lost more than my team last year.
Yeah, they did. I mean, the only teams worse were the Baltimore Orioles and the pardon me, I believe the Diamondbacks I think it was the Diamondbacks. Yeah, they had 110 losses. But hey, you don't get much more dark than Texas Rangers for dark horse candidate to make some noise here. Well, but I think a wild card spot for the Rangers at this point is a huge accomplishment for them. Coming out of last place, 27th in baseball to a wild card spot, hell yeah, that's what I want.
And to come out of the year, I thought of it as a dark horse because of what they've been, but they had a great free agency, bringing in Corey Seager and some other guys. So I didn't think they'd be a dark horse, but I didn't think they'd be where they're at right now either. I didn't think they'd be 3 games under at this point, but they're starting to play better baseball. I think, that'd really be good for them if they got a wild card because you're not going to win that division with Houston. We thought maybe the Angels would challenge them.
That's a huge ask at this point to get past Houston. I mean, I had them as one of the top 10 teams in power rankings right now, and they are living up to the billing. Houston continues to be that top team in the AL West.
And Seattle's starting to wake up a little bit.
They might have had a shot for a minute there, but Houston pulled away.
Seattle's starting to wake up a little bit. Got to point that out. 25-31. They were a little bit worse than that. So
yeah, I know. Over the power rankings, I had them moving up just a little bit. I had them at, let me see where I put them real quick. We'll wrap up this show. I had them at 12th with the Pirates of Pittsburgh at 11th there, Mike. So you got to watch out for your squad too. I think we got some up-and-comers here in Major League Baseball. We're going to get back to it. NBA Finals on tonight, but you can catch more baseball here on your sports network, live streaming all evening, so long as the rain holds out. But that'll do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast. I've been Alec Cabrera. That's Mike Wolfgang. I believe this is Wednesday. We'll see you back tomorrow.